We're so glad that you've joined us for this week's message from Anchor Chapel in Baton Rouge, Louisiana. Our hope is that you're both encouraged and challenged in your relationship with Jesus. Be blessed as you listen to this week's message.
So a couple of years ago, I was invited to a trip to go skiing in Montana, and I love skiing. I try to go snow skiing once a year if possible, and that's just something that I get really excited about whenever somebody asks me. And I'm also the kind of guy, so not only do I like skiing, but I'm also the kind of guy that does not like to be outdone whenever it comes to anything athletic, anything sports related. I like to be the one who is the most extreme. I just have this competitive thing about me. And if you come to Ultimate Frisbee nights on Thursday night, you're like, who is this guy? He's not our pastor right now. What's this dude? But you get competitive. I have this very competitive attitude. And this year, whenever I went skiing, it came out that year. And one of the things that we were trying to do is we were trying to just do all the trails that weren't really trails. So I've got one picture of kind of what we would go for, and we would look for all these trails that were going between the trees, that were hills all over the place, and they were slightly more dangerous. They weren't really marked anywhere as a trail. You would be going through areas, and we thought it was a blast, and we were having fun. And so the first couple runs, we're just testing the waters, going through everything. And, we've got probably 6 or 8 of us there on this trip, and we're all just trying to, follow each other and follow each other's lead. And, I'm kind of leading it somewhat, but they don't want to go up in the trees as much, so they're kind of just going down the trail. I'm going up in the trees, and I'm trying to be all extreme, and I'm like, they're going down the hill, and I'm like, you guys aren't seeing how cool I am being up here, because they were missing the whole thing. But I'm down there, and I'm trying to show off while I'm skiing, and all of a sudden, I realize, I'm starting to lose them. I can't see them as much, and while I'm looking for them, I'm speeding between these trees, and I'm wearing a helmet, but as I'm speeding through these trees, and I'm looking for my friends, I didn't see this tree laying down about this high, and this tree knocks me out of my skis. It hits me in the head, and I fly out of my skis, and I land in this thick powder. I'm up to a waist deep, and I'm trying to dig my way out, and it's taking me a while to dig out. So if you've ever been in that kind of situation, it kind of gets a little freaky, because you're like, I'm taking my skis off, and I'm trying to dig my way out, and I finally get out, and whenever I get out, I realize I am all by myself. All my friends just kept going. I'm like, great friends, right? So I'm skiing down this mountain, and at one moment, in the blink of an eye, I go from very confident and very excited to be there to all of a sudden I'm terrified. And I'm like, not only did I almost get knocked out, and I'm like, did I get a concussion, because this was serious. I've got a photo of the helmet. You can see the helmet got all scraped up on the top, but it probably saved me from being knocked out. But I'm skiing out there, and I go from really confident to really scared in one split second. And the thing that changed for me was not even that I had gotten hit in the head with a tree, but it was that no one was there to help. No one was there while I was laying in the snow. I'm pulling myself out by myself. I'm trying to get out of this. I'm trying to get back down the trail by myself. And I would never tell any of them, and I've never told any of those guys, and none of them are here today, and so don't tell them, but I would never tell any of them that I was actually scared. I'm sitting in the snow, and I'm like, man, I don't know if I can find them. I'm in Montana. I don't even know. I guess all this goes downhill to the same place, but I don't know where I am. I'm just out here in the mountains by myself, just got hit in the head, and all my friends were gone. And it reminded me of something that I want to talk about today, that whenever you're a part of a community, it can bring out the best in you. It can bring out bravery in you. It can bring out the parts of you that you never thought you could bring out. The being unafraid to take chances, the joy and the life. Community brings that out of you. But a lack of community can bring out the worst in you. Can bring out fear in you, as it did for me that day when I was all by myself. And I want you to think about where you are today. Evaluate your life. Do you have a good community? You're sitting around people, and you're a part of a church, and you may even go to an anchor group, but there's a difference between just being around people and really having a tight-knit community that will help you whenever things get hairy. That's what this series is all about. How in the world do we survive? How in the world do we even look at the moments that we're in that seem like disaster? How do we even see that as blessed while we're in the mess? And that happens, I believe, much easier whenever you are in community with people. You've got to be connected with people. You've got to be a part of people. I saw this was really fascinating. I think it's amazing. I believe that Jesus blesses us through community. And you want to see a good picture of who Jesus is, that really comes through community. Because none of us in this room, not even me, none of us are a good picture of Jesus, right? We've all got our hang-ups. We've all got we've all got sin struggles that make us not look like Christ. So what Jesus does instead to reach us and to give us all a picture of Jesus, he does that through community. He does that through the church. And every one of us, the good in every one of us and the strengths in every one of us that look like him, then we get a picture of Jesus whenever we are together, right? So this is what Jesus wants us to understand. Community is how we see him and how he ministers to us. I've never been here yet, and that's one of the places I want to go. But I want to go to the Redwood Forest in California. I want to go see this. I don't know if any of you guys have been there, but there's these large trees, big sequoia trees, redwood trees, that you can actually drive through some of them. They're so big. And I thought something was very interesting about these trees. Some of these trees, tallest trees in the world, actually are redwood trees. One of these trees holds a world record at 379 feet tall. 379 feet tall. And all of these trees average well over 250 feet tall, gigantic trees. And you know what's amazing about these trees is that no redwood tree has a root system that goes any deeper than 5 or 6 feet. Every redwood tree, the strength in its root system, what holds up the 379-foot tall tree, is the fact that its root systems under the ground will find another redwood tree, and their root systems will intertwine, and they will grab a hold of each other, and they will end up meshing into one root. So there's this massive system of roots underground that redwood trees use to reach their height. They could never stand that tall in a field by themselves. That's why you only see redwood forest, because they depend on the strength of each other. And I believe that the same thing for us, in order for us to be able to reach the maturity, the height, the strength that we need to reach in Christ, you've got to have some people around you that hold you accountable, that keep you grounded, that remind you what you are a part of, that you're not by yourself, you're not alone in this thing, you are a part of something bigger. We are all a part of the forest. You're not a lone tree in the middle of a field. Or you don't have to be. But some Christians choose to live that way. In Hebrews 10, though, whoever writes the book of Hebrews, many scholars believe it's Paul, but there's no inclusive evidence about it. But the writer of Hebrews says this in verse 24 of Hebrews 10, "Let us think of ways to motivate one another to acts of love and good works. And let us not neglect meeting together, as some people do, but encourage one another." You know, he gives a really good example and a really good illustration of what it looks like to be connected, that we are motivating each other, that the Christian life is not an inward life. You're not just thinking of yourself, but you are thinking of ways, you are creatively coming up with ways to encourage each other. The people in your anchor group, the people that you see on Sundays, are you texting them throughout the week? How are you doing? What's going on in your life? Tell me about your marriage. Tell me about this thing with your job that you were telling me about. That we are motivating each other to be stronger, to have faith, to be built up throughout the week. We encourage each other and we build each other up. I saw this amazing story of this kid, little boy, first day in school. His father was a police officer. And his father died recently in Amarillo, Texas. And 20 police officers or so showed up at his first day of school and gave him a hug and let him know, "We're here for you. Your dad's not here, but we're here for you. You know, we value the relationship that we had with your dad, and now you get to have the benefits of that." You know, just like these police officers were doing for that little boy, I believe that that's a good picture of what the body of Christ should be like. None of us should hurt on our own. None of us should feel pain on our own. You should never have to go cry in the corner or be alone and not tell anyone about it. And I think that happens for multiple reasons. Sometimes we're afraid to let people know because we like to put up this front that we're really strong and we are impervious to whatever's going on in our life. But we've got to have community's got to work both ways. When you're dealing with something, you got to invite somebody in. You got to say, "Man, I need some help. Pray for me." And then on the other side, you've got to be willing to say, "Hey, look, I see that you're hurting. I see what you're going through. I see that you're dealing with something. Is there anything I can do to help? How can I pray for you? How can I be there for you?" You hear this Christian phrase going around, doing life together. We're doing life together as believers. And sometimes we wonder, what does that mean to really do life together? What is it in your life that matters? What is it in your life that matters? What is it that you enjoy doing? And are you doing it with someone who's building you up in Christ and you're building them up as well? It's pretty simple. I mean, it could be as simple as being a part of an anchor group, which today I'm going to mention anchor groups a few times because I really believe in this. That you've got to be connected to a body. You've got to be connected to people. So whether it is something like a sports night, or it is a young marrieds group, or it is a college student group, or it is a parents with children group, or whatever your group is that you connect with, you've got to be a part of other people so that you can be built up and strengthened and have someone there for you when you go through hell. Because you will. All of us will. And you don't want to do that alone. You don't want to be by yourself. And I often end up hearing people say things like, especially with what's been going on, all the flooding, people are saying things like, I don't have anybody to help me. And you go down the street, if you drive down the street and you see all kinds of piles of trash in the front yard and you see one house with no piles, that person doesn't have anybody. And one of the things I was blown away by is every home that we went to that had a family member or someone at part of Anchor that they flooded, there was a lot of help there. And they had a big pile in their front yard. And that was a good example of, hey, there's a lot of help. But then there were people down the streets that didn't have that kind of help. And we may not have known them. And sometimes we tried to send people there. And maybe as you're going home or you're driving through neighborhoods, you can do the same thing. Find someone who seems to be alone in this. But whenever they are alone in the middle of struggle, it's going to be way harder to get out. But sometimes people don't understand the importance of that until tragedy strikes. And then oftentimes, you end up fighting through most of that on your own. You don't have to do that, though. Invite somebody into your life. But community works both ways. So you've got to invite people into your life, and you can't complain whenever everybody else is getting help and everyone else seems to have friends, but you don't seem to have any. Are you friendly? You're going to have as many friends as you are friendly. How many friends do you have? How many people do you have in your life? How many people are you inviting in? I heard someone say today that there was a quote going around in one of the Baton Rouge blogs that I thought was really cool. And this quote was that the complainers and the doers are never the same people. And I thought that was so true. That those of us who are complaining all the time, I don't have anybody, I don't, whatever, somebody needs to go and somebody needs to help me, how much are you helping other people? How much are you giving yourselves to other people? Because all relationships are two ways. So think of it like a bank account. Every relationship has a relational savings account or bank account. You always want to put in more than you take out or you end up in bankruptcy. Relational bankruptcy. You've got to put in. You've got to invest in other people. You've got to build other people or there won't be people there for you when you're going through your hell. You've got to invest in other people. Community is both ways. You've got to make sure that you are investing in people. We have a really great story of someone in the church this week that their home flooded, and she was just blown away by the amount of friends and people who came and helped their family to get back on their feet and helped them to demo everything and get ready again. So I want you guys to hear Courtney's story. It's a really powerful story of what Jesus is able to do through community. Check it out.
Hey, I'm Courtney Pope. This is the house we grew up in. I've been living here for 16 years. My parents built it from the ground up. Saturday morning around 9:30, my parents came home. They had been out checking on everybody else in the community that we knew flooded. And my dad had gotten a phone call just kind of giving us information on the flood of '83 and where our property was and what would have happened then. So at that point we knew we needed to prepare for water. We waited around, said we had time, and within 30 minutes the water had filled up our backyard and was almost at our doorstep. So at that point we had to just act a little quicker. We took everything we had and threw it onto beds, saved the important things, stuck pictures as high as we could, and then at 5:20 it reached the inside of the house, and we ended up in our neighbors upstairs planning to stay there. At 9 o'clock, our neighbors were mandatory evacuated out, and we got the phone call that the boats would be coming back for us. They showed up about 10 and took us to the front of the subdivision where there was one road that was dry in this whole town. And it just so happened to be that one. And from that point, we walked to the neighborhood Walmart down the street about a mile. We slept in the parking lot that night. Not much sleep, but we were with about 200 other people that had evacuated. At about 6 a.m., the gas station across the street opened up, and we were able to get Pop-Tarts and water for the first time in about 14 hours. We ate. The whole night, all I kept telling myself was joy comes in the morning. And that statement could not have been more true the next morning as the sun came out. At 6 a.m., the sun came out and the military vehicles showed up, and those vehicles took us to Satsuma, to the shelter, where my best friend was able to get to us and house us for the next 2 days. Before I even got here, my friends were here waiting with open arms, which was the best thing at that point because we had had really zero contact with people, being the cell service was bad. So showing up to see those familiar faces and the people you just wanted to hug and having them here was a joy in the midst of all of that heartbreak. And I remember standing at my room, having that moment of just taking everything in, seeing my bed just on the right side and my jewelry box on the left, and jewelry everywhere, and my record player on the floor, and records strung out, and clothes every which direction. And in that moment, I had to remind myself that they're just things. There was just that question of, how do we pick this up? Like, how do we pick up the pieces from this? Like, where do you start? And Patty and Lexi walked up behind me, and they knew that I was broken down, but they were like, okay, let's do it. Like, just start picking stuff up and let's start reading through it. And so in that moment, when I didn't even think I could make that decision, they made those for me. The people surrounding us, every person that walked up, worked so hard, so selflessly, no complaints, no asking for anything in return. They just did it. And I have never felt community like I did in these past 2 weeks. As we're knocking out cabinets and scraping up floors and pulling sheetrock out the walls, there was just a joy in that because the people surrounding me were constantly laughing, constantly goofy. We kept worship music on the whole time, and we just sang together and we laughed, and then they let me cry, and they loved on me more than I could have ever asked for, more than I could have ever imagined. And in that, I just really understood the importance of finding a place and surrounding yourself with the people that encourage you and lift you up, and people that are constantly going to hurt when you hurt and walk with you through even the heartache of life, and they're gonna be there. They never stepped away, they never backed out, they never said this is too much, and they never washed their hands of us, and instead they took 10 steps forward and placed their hands over us to say, this is what we can offer, and this is the way we can love you. And in that, I think relationships grew so much, and relationships that I didn't even have before just bloomed, and I am so happy they did, and I will never let go of those people. You go through this and you see the community and you see the hurt that everybody's experiencing, but whereas some people don't have that, I know where my hope lies. To see the people that don't have that and they don't have that sliver of hope really hurts me, and it makes me want to reach every person possible to say, like, let me help you, like, let me show you that there is goodness even when you're hurting. So I really just want to say thank you to everybody at Anchor Chapel for really covering us the past few weeks and being there and loving on us and always being there with open arms. Could not go without the hugs at this church.
And so what a good picture of community. You can see that community is really tested in the fire. Community is tested. You see what you have. You see what kind of friendships you have when you really go through something. And also, I love how she said that even the relationships were built in the middle of it, even stronger. And I just think you don't want to go through something in life. You don't want to have to deal with something alone. You're not meant to. We're meant to be together. Jesus as asking for the church as a group of people to be the body. It takes all of us to look like him. And Jesus challenged us to take what he had, to take what he showed us. He showed us what it meant to live the gospel. And then he said, now you guys go and do it as a church, as the church. It's all of us together that make up a church. It's not just up to the pastors. It's not just up to the mature. It's up to everyone. We need each other. Matthew 11, there's a story, actually two really quick accounts that I wanted to let you guys hear because they're so similar to each other. This man, John the Baptist, who is the man who baptized Jesus, so he's kind of a superstar in the Bible. He's the guy that you mention John the Baptist and pretty much everybody knows who he is, whether you're a Christian or not. You've at least got a picture of who John the Baptist is. He's a guy who would wear he lived in the wilderness and he would eat honey and he would wear animal skins in the wilderness because he was he basically had taken a Nazirite vow and he was just separate from everybody else. He had committed his life to God. So his whole life he's wandering in the desert and he's hearing from God and he's kind of a prophet and he's prophesying about Jesus coming. And Jesus' ministry starts and John the Baptist baptizes him and he says something incredible. He ends up saying, now it's Jesus' turn. He's got to increase and I've got to decrease. He says, and if I decrease, that's when he can increase. And he just sets up the stage for Jesus. He knows Jesus. He sees them. He's the first man who recognizes Jesus. Then John the Baptist gets in trouble. He says something to a political man, someone who was ruling at the time. He says something to him that offends him so hard, so badly that he puts him in prison. And John the Baptist is about to be beheaded. And he's in prison, and you see what happens to him the moment. Because John the Baptist, just like Jesus, he had disciples. He had people following him. The moment that he gets in prison, listen to how his attitude changes. It says in verse 2 of Matthew 11, John the Baptist, who was in prison, heard about all the things the Messiah was doing. So he sent his disciples to ask Jesus, are you the Messiah we've been expecting? Or should we keep looking for someone else? I'm watching this and I'm like, that's so odd to me that this could happen to someone like John the Baptist. He's the man. He knows who Jesus is. He tells the world who Jesus is. He knows this is Jesus. He knows he's the Messiah. But whenever he gets put in prison, all of a sudden, when he gets separated from his people, he gets separated from his disciples, from his community, his attitude changes. And he gets discouraged, and he gets fearful, and he loses his faith in Jesus because he's separated from everyone else. He's going through something difficult. He's going through a prison on his own, by himself, and he loses faith because of it. I was doing some study this week about solitary confinement because this is really kind of the situation that he's in. I don't know if you realize this, but solitary confinement is considered a form of torture in America. And there are jails all across America where people are put in solitary confinement, sometimes for serious things, but sometimes just to separate people or, just to get people out. And what the studies have shown is that solitary confinement has such an incredibly drastic and devastating effect on the mind that it can make someone go crazy. It can make someone go mad. And people will often end up trying to take their lives in solitary confinement because of just what it does being separated from everyone else. And it's not even like being separated from friends necessarily, just being separated from other prisoners, just other human contact. They end up going almost crazy. There was a man who was in solitary confinement for a while. And solitary confinement is you're in this cell for 23 to 24 hours a day. You get out for a little bit of exercise, maybe, and then you get immediately put back in. And there was a man who was in solitary confinement for a while, and they interviewed him, and he says this. They call it the hole. And he says, the hole is depressing enough to drive many men to take their lives in order to escape. They would rather lose their lives than stay in the hole. It's easy to see why a man would prefer death. This is a man who's experienced it, and he says, I've been there. I would rather have died many times than have to stay in this environment. Last week we talked about Paul and Silas and the incredible faith that they had and the decision that they made to worship God even while they were in prison. Do you know what I think one of the keys was to that story being successful? Is that Paul and Silas were in prison. They were together. They at least had each other. And they were in prison. They were in the inner dungeon, but they had each other. And John the Baptist right here, he doesn't have anybody, and he is losing faith. He's a man of God. He's a man who trusts God, but he's losing faith. He would rather just lose his life in this moment because he's separated from people, and he loses everything. He loses his beliefs, his faith. And I have two real quick things that I'd like for you to take down if you take notes. When you're alone, it's only a matter of time before you crumble. When you're alone, it's only a matter of time before you crumble. You can't do it by yourself. You can't make it through something difficult on your own. When you go through devastating things in your life, you need somebody there. You need people there with you. It's almost impossible to go through this kind of stuff on your own. Verse 11 says this. Jesus ends up talking about John the Baptist, and he says this after John the Baptist's disciples question him, "Are you really who you say you are? Are you really the Messiah?" Jesus says, "I tell you the truth." He's talking about who he is and his legacy. Of all who have ever lived, none is greater than John the Baptist. Jesus says there's no man who is greater than John the Baptist. What a man of God, and Jesus acknowledges this, but he says even the greatest among us will crumble when they don't have community. When they are separated from the body of Christ, we all end up having a breaking point. We all will end up losing our faith. And I said community goes both ways earlier. If you feel like you're always alone and you don't have friends, you've got to reach out to people. But there's also a responsibility on everyone else to see those who seem alone, to see those in the prison of their own, to find them and to rescue and to pull them out, to give them hope. It's our responsibility. Those of us who are connected to a community, it is our responsibility to find those who aren't. This morning, and Judah's been going through this thing the last 3 weeks or so where he wakes up in the middle of the night and he'll wake up and he'll be crying and he'll say he's scared. He'll come to our door and, we try leaving a nightlight on. We try leaving music on. We try all kinds of different things. We're just trying to figure it out. It's just, I guess, a stage that he's in right now. Well, it's finally started to get a little better. But last Sunday and this Sunday, he wake up about 5 a.m. Last week, he snuck into our bed, and we didn't even realize he was there. We woke up, and there's a small child in our bed. It's not great for intimacy. So this morning, we both happen to wake up at 5 a.m. Now, he's not crying, but we wake up, and we hear he's tiptoeing through our room. And as he's tiptoeing through our room, it's like our room's pretty dark. So he's trying to find his way through the room. And we can hear his feet here. And then he'll walk over here. And you can hear his feet. And then he'll walk to the other side of the bed. And you can hear his feet. And Brooke and I are up and we're right by each other because we like to sleep really close holding each other because we just got the romance thing happening. And I hear her whisper. She says, "I think that's Judah." She whispers, and I'm like, "Yeah, I hope it's Judah." But we hear him in the room. We hear him tiptoeing around in the room, and we don't do anything about it. I know he's in the room because he's scared. Now, we've told him many times, do not wake up in the middle of the night. You're a big boy. You can stay here. We've told him he knows he's not supposed to do it, so he's sneaking around. But I know the reasons he's in there is because he's scared. He's in there scared, walking around, and even though I know he's scared, we are silent. We're not going to invite him in the bed. We're not going to invite him to be in our room. We don't want to make a habit of that. We are listening to him struggling. We are listening to him fumbling around, and we're like, just play it cool. Don't let him know we're here, If he can sense fear, So we don't say a single thing, and then all of a sudden we hear, "Ah!" And he starts crying. He ran into something and starts crying. So I jump out of bed, and I turn the lights on, and we've got this big wooden, what do you call that, bench at the base of our bed so I can put on shoes and stuff. Well, I made this thing, and if you've ever seen anything I make, I like thick wood. So he runs into this, he hits this thing with his head, and he falls down, and the light's on, and he's crying, and I'm like, what happened? And he immediately puts his hand on his head, and he's like, my hand, he's crying. And so then I'm like, okay, get in the bed. He finally gets what he wants, and we get him in the bed, and he spends the next half hour in bed with us. But I was thinking about that this morning. I was thinking, it's so funny how like we were listening to him walking around. We know he's struggling. We know he's scared, but we don't do anything about it because we prefer to be alone. We prefer not to have to deal with him. We prefer to just go back to bed. Go to sleep. Your sister doesn't have a problem sleeping. We prefer our sleep. We don't want to have to get up and deal with it. We're like, maybe it'll just go away. And of course, that's not going to happen. But I thought, how many Christians see and hear people stumbling and struggling all around us, and we whisper to each other? Did you hear about them? Did you see what's going on? And we listen, and we like the sound of gossip, and we'll talk about it. And we'll hear about people's struggle, and we'll sense their struggle all around us, but we won't do anything about it because we're comfortable where we are. Because the truth is, it is costly to invite someone else into your community. But I think Christians oftentimes get click right, and they don't get community right. We're good at having cliques. We're good at having a group of friends that we like, us four and no more, and we don't want to include other people in. But that is the message of the gospel, is that we are always including someone else. We are always pulling someone else in. Someone that you know is in a prison today. Someone that you know needs freedom. Someone that you know needs community. You need to let somebody free. And you've got to find the people that are hurting and invite them into your life. Community is two ways. They have to be open, but you've got to go searching. I want to challenge all of us today. Where is the area of community where you need to be stretched today? Jesus continues as he's talking about John the Baptist, and he says this in verse 14. He says, and if you are willing to accept what I say about John the Baptist, he is Elijah. So he is like an Elijah, a prophet, one of the prophets said to come. So a prophet like Elijah was said to come again. And Jesus is saying John the Baptist is that guy that we're prophesying about. He's one of the greatest men who ever lived, and he's struggling. You know what I think is interesting about the fact that Jesus brings that up? John the Baptist is in prison alone, losing his faith, and he brings up Elijah, and it's curious to me that Elijah deals with something very similar. One of the greatest prophets in the Old Testament, one of the greatest men of God in 1 Kings 18, if you know the story, there's a story where 450 prophets of this false god, Baal, challenge Elijah to this match of the supernatural. And Elijah ends up saying, I'm going to prove to you who God is once and for all. And they create this sacrifice and dig these ditches all around it, fill it with water, douse it with water. And then he calls down, he asks God, he prays to God, God, show these people your strength. And God sends fire down from heaven, consumes it all. And Elijah is proven to be a real man of God who serves the one true God. Everybody begins to follow Elijah, and Elijah, in one of the most epic Braveheart kind of scenes in the Bible, gathers up these 450 prophets of Baal, and he kills all of them. This guy is an intense dude, a man of God who not only has the authority to stop rain and start rain in his prayers, he outruns a chariot one day. He ends up, he just does all these crazy miracles. He calls down this fire from heaven. He's an incredible man of God who does these incredible miracles. But the next chapter, it says that this queen who find out about her prophets all being killed, her prophets of Baal all being killed, she says, by morning tomorrow, you will be dead just as well. That's basically what she says. I'm coming to get you, Elijah. So Elijah runs away. He takes off running. He's scared. He takes off running, and it says this in verse 3 of 1 Kings 19. Elijah was afraid, and he fled for his life. He went to Beersheba, a town in Judah, and he left his servant there. He left his servant there. He had a friend. He had someone there, but he left his servant there, and he's all alone. He goes into the wilderness, traveling all day, deep into the wilderness. He sat down under a solitary broom tree, and he prayed that he might die. I've had enough, Lord. He says, take my life, for I am no better than my ancestors who have already died. It's amazing to me how this guy Elijah also, just like John the Baptist and just like you and me, the moment that he's separated from accountability, the moment he's separated from his community, the moment he's a lone redwood tree in the middle of a field, it says he's sitting under a solitary broom tree. It's such a sad scene. He loses his faith in God too. God, just take my life. I'm done. I know I just saw miracles like literally 24 hours ago, but I have no faith anymore. This woman's going to kill me. He loses all faith. Can you not see this importance of community? Can you not see what happens to someone when they get separated from people that will encourage them in their relationship with Jesus? It happens to you all the time. It happens to all of us. We all go through bouts of depression, sadness, maybe thoughts of suicide. How many people know that? How many people know what you're going through? How many people know what you've been thinking? If nobody knows that, you're not doing community well. Tell somebody. It takes both sides. And every one of us, if you haven't seen somebody in a while, if you haven't seen someone in your anchor group or at a church on Sunday or somewhere that you used to hang out, reach out to somebody. You don't know where they are. We need to have each other. You know what I thought was amazing? A couple weeks ago, whenever the flood waters hit and Anchor lost a bunch of equipment as well, I mentioned this a few weeks ago, but we had about $22,000 of loss, and in under 24 hours, all that money came in. Everything we needed was paid for. But what I didn't say is that a lot of that money came in through other churches and church plants who are part of an organization that we are a part of called the ARC. ARC stands for the Association of Related Churches. And it's not a denomination, it's just people that help you to plant a church. If you've got it on your heart, you want to plant a church, this organization will help you to do it. So we're just connected with other pastors. We just know some other pastors. And in this group of people, a lot of these pastors gave us money. Pastors that I've never even met before, other than Facebook or Instagram. But because I'm a part of a family, and our church is a part of a family, our immediate needs were met. I love the slogan of ARC. They say this, and their hashtag, if you look it up, you'll see a lot of ARC posts, is don't do life alone. That's what they say. As a pastor, they understand that you're going to feel alone sometimes. You don't have to be, though. Here's a bunch of friends that you can have. Have our friendships. And it's been incredible for me and Brooke. And obviously, whenever we were at a great need a couple weeks ago, people really stepped in and really made a difference. I would say to you the same thing today. Don't do life alone. Don't do this life alone. You need community. You need to be connected with other people. In verse 14, look at what happens with Elijah. It says, he replied again, I've zealously served the Lord God Almighty, but the people of Israel has broken their covenant with you, torn down your altars, and killed every one of your prophets. I am the only one left. I'm the only prophet left, and now they're trying to kill me too. You know what's amazing about this is it wasn't true. God ends up telling him in a couple verses, he says, I've actually got 7,000 other people that are serving me right now. But you're not thinking of that because you're just focused on yourself. When you're out of community and you pull yourself out of relationship with people, your life becomes so self-centered. And when things don't go your way, you get so sad and so depressed because you don't have the accountability to say, hey, your life's bigger than you. This thing, this Jesus that we serve, this gospel that we are a part of advancing, it's bigger than you. It's bigger than your story. We are just a part of this story. You are just a part of the body of Christ. You are not the body of Christ. You need each other. We need each other. But it's so easy to lose that. It's so easy to forget that when you remove yourself from relationship with other people. Ever see these National Geographic shows when like a lion or a wolf comes in and they'll attack a herd of animals? And their intent is not to take down the whole herd. Their intent is to take down the slowest or the weakest of these animals. And that's the prey. It's the ones that are the slowest, the weakest, the ones that they can separate from the herd. And it happens to elephants. It happens to bison. It happens to caribou. It happens to every, like large or small. If you can get separated from the group, you're in danger. The enemy will do that to you every single day of your life. He will try constantly to separate you from community. He will try constantly to separate you from the group, but you need each other. We need each other. I'm going to ask the band to come up as I get ready to close. In Mark 14, I find it amazing that even Jesus needed community. Even Jesus needed encouragement in his darkest hour. He's in the Garden of Gethsemane, and he knows he's facing the cross. He's facing crucifixion. He's facing an agonizing death for you and for me. This is the gospel, that the perfect Son of God would come down to this earth, live a perfect sinless life, die an agonizing death for you and for me. And then on the third day, he would be risen from the dead, and in resurrection power, not only raise himself from the dead, but promise resurrection life for every person who would follow him. That's available to every one of us today. But when Jesus was facing the cross, he felt the pain of it. He felt the crushing weight of the cross and what he would endure immediately before him, and he needed his friends. He needed his friends. This is what it says in verse 33 of Mark 14. Jesus is going to this garden, and he pulls his three closest disciples. He says he took Peter and James and John with him, and he became deeply troubled and distressed. He told them this: "My soul is crushed with grief to the point of death. Stay here. Stay with me. Keep watch with me." Jesus says, and he illustrates for us, that in the moments when you feel crushed with deep grief, you need some close friends. You need some community that you can say, "Stay with me. Stay with me in this." If you know the story, you know that his disciples weren't able to stay up. 3 times Jesus goes back to his disciples and they fall asleep every time. They couldn't stay up, they couldn't pray with him. But this fulfilled prophecy. Jesus was ultimately alone. Did this by himself. He was alone. This agonizing pain he felt on his own at the cross. He was abandoned by the Father for a moment. And he cries out as he's dying, "God, why are you forsaking me?" And he knows the answer. But Jesus was forsaken on the cross so you and I would never be. Jesus was forgotten for a moment so you would always be remembered. Jesus was left alone, and he felt the weight of crushing grief so that you would never have to feel it alone. And the truth is today, whether or not you have people around you, you have Jesus. You have God always. People will fail you. I understand that. And you may have tried the community thing. You may have tried to be close with people and get involved in a group, and people have let you down. They always will. I always will. We always will. People will let you down. But Jesus never lets us down. He never lets us go. Jesus went through agonizing pain and separation from God so you never would.
Thank you for joining us for this week's message from Anchor Chapel. If you would like to support the ministry of Anchor Chapel, you can easily do so by visiting our website, anchorchapel.com. Also, follow us on social media at Anchor Chapel. We'll see you next week. God bless.